What's up, folks, and welcome back to the channel. The first in my Ned Rig series, which will be linked up here and down in the description, actually brought a couple of really good questions. So we're going to go over that right now. So the first question was, how do you manage to keep Z-Man baits on the mule fishing jigs that you use? Let's go ahead and get on it. Another quick question is, why the gloves? And the reason that I do the gloves is that I've got psoriasis. It's not freaking terrible. I call it moderate, but it severely affects the fingernails and is a major distraction to whatever I'm doing on camera. I know I'm going to have to answer this over and over again over the course of this channel, but hopefully that puts that to bed for a little while. All right, so let's rig a Ned. For the purposes of this demonstration, I'm upsizing a little bit. This is a 1/16 ounce mule fishing jig head, and we've got a big TRD. So it's very simple. The way that I rig them is I make sure that the lighter side, the chartreuse side, hits the bottom and is facing down, because a lot of times when you pop this thing, fish are going to be looking up at it, and that looks a little more interesting than that. So let's go ahead and do it. I'm going to thread that through. Got a pretty good gauge on where it belongs, and that's pretty much right there. Could probably pull just a little bit out, and that's better. It looks a little more natural that way. And if you just leave it like this, the bait is going to separate from the jig. So what you want to do is you want to just grab that Elastec nice and tightly, pull it up like that, snap it back, and we are good. This bait is going nowhere. So as I pulled that beyond the jig head, it expanded the material a little bit, and as I snapped it back, the bait keeper engaged, and that is fully stuck in there. This is not going anywhere at this point. So there you go. That's how you do that. And this is true with Z-Man Elastec, and it's also true with what Ethan uses at mule fishing. Seems to be a pretty similar stretchy compound as Z-Man uses. And so if you just stretch that beyond the bait keeper, you're gonna be good. And this thing is solid in there. Look how I'm pulling that, and it just snaps back. Perfect. And you're good. The next question is a little bit loaded. Might be hard to do on video, but if you can describe more about how to set your drag, I would find that useful. If you have an example of a binding drag or how you can tell, also useful. All right, I'm going to tackle the second half of that question first. I'm taking the gloves off for this one. The drag is typically made of either felt or carbon fiber discs. Some of the companies completely cheap out and they just use a piece of plastic. You'll obviously want to avoid those. But the bottom line is, think of it as a brake rotor on your car. When your brake rotor is warped and you apply the brakes, it's going to be really grabby as you stop, or bindy, as I said. It's the exact same concept. Take it easy. So here's a good example of a good drag. This is the Lew's Carbon Fire Speed Spin on a Lew's Carbon Fire Speed Stick. I've reviewed those. Make sure to check them out over here. As you pull against the drag, It's extremely consistent, and it doesn't matter how tight the drag is, it pulls out the exact same way. Now, much like brakes, if any of that stuff is warped or stupid in any particular way, as the spool spins, once it hits a certain part of the rotation, it's going to bind up if your reel is a piece of shit. So when I use the term bindy, that's exactly what I meant. Treat your drag like it's brake rotors. Of course, they don't need to be changed or anything like that, but you need to make sure that they are good right out of the gate. So going back to the first question, might be hard to do on your video, but if you can describe more about how to set your drag, I would find that useful. And the example is trial and error. Let's go back to the gloves. This is something that I can't really tell you how to do. A couple things that you need to bear in mind. Part of it is the weight of your entire system, particularly the rod, how it flexes. You tend to go with moderate fast with such light wire hooks because take a look at this thing. This is 1/32 of an ounce. That is a very light wire hook. You don't want your drag set so high that you're just gonna rip that thing out of the lip of a big fish. But you also don't want it so soft that you can't do a proper hook set. So that's a matter of trial and error. You have to work on that every day you're on the river, because there are going to be times where you might get a wind knot or something like that and you completely loosen your drag to get rid of the wind knot. That video is up here. And then you go back to it and you're never going to be in the same place. So you have to experiment with it. You have to get a feel for what works, both on the water that you're on and the fish that you're going for. It's going to take a little bit of time to get used to that and be successful right out of the gate. Now, I can tell you that a lot of times I'll start fishing for the day and will end up losing my first couple of fish. And the first thing you'll see me doing is just drag tick or two, just based on what I found. And it's this isn't a per fish thing. I'm not, you know, obviously you don't know what you're gonna catch, but you want a sweet spot between the bigger fish and the smaller fish. There's a good chance that you set your drag to basically automatically hook a big fish, you're gonna lose a few small ones. But you also don't want it so tight that if a big fish gets on a light wire hook, it's just gonna rip through its lip and that's it, and it's all over. Those are the fish that you want, so you need to err, because it's a huge error situation. You're not gonna get every fish. You're not gonna get every fish. So my logic tells me to err toward the bigger fish. I would rather lose a couple of small fish, or 6 or 7 small fish, and land an 18 or 19. The key is getting that drag in a scenario where you can catch as many fish as possible, to where you're losing the tiny ones, but actually hooking up and the drag not being so tight that you lose the big ones. My next outing is out on the mighty Potomac, where we got a lot of potential to catch a lot of fish on these baits. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks for watching, folks, and we will see you on the next one.